Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session of our Go Digital Western Cape webinar series. My name is Robert Davids. I'm with the Digital Economy Unit at the Department of Economic Development and Tourism at the Western Cape Government, and I'll be your host for today's session. We're very proud to present the session, which is hosted and produced by the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. Today is our ninth installment of this, so we're very happy that all of you could join us, that you have shown interest in this topic, and that you'll share the next hour or so with us. As I said, I'll be your host, so you'll be seeing much of me during the course of the day, but we also have a very valued guest as our speaker today, Mr. Khaliq Dollie, who is the digital advisor at Microsoft. So also to our speaker, or as we refer to him as our panelist, welcome to Mr. Dollie. And we're really looking forward to the time with you and what you have to share with us today. But before we continue, I just would like to do a few what we refer to as housekeeping rules to ensure that the session runs smoothly and that the presentations are not interrupted. So firstly, as the audience, I'd like to inform you that this session is being recorded. The reason for this is that we keep the recordings and we upload it to our website after this webinar so that yourselves and other members of our business community can access the webinars after the live sessions have been completed. Then secondly, I would also please like to request that all members in the audience turn off your videos. So anybody who has your video on, could you please turn them off now? And also ask you to mute your microphones for the duration of the session. And the main reason for that is that we just trying to make everything run smoothly and not to interrupt the presentations as we go along. Thirdly, which is quite important, the way we produce these webinars is that we do take questions, but we please ask you as the audience members to post your questions in the chat window. That function is on the Teams app, and you can see a little text box there. So if you have a question during the course of the presentation, please type it in the chat window. At the end of the presentation by Mr. Dollie, we will do a moderated question and answer session, which I will moderate. So we ask you to please just cooperate in that regard. And then lastly, for those of you who are very active on social media, we ask that you use the hashtag #GoDigitalWesternCape if you'd like to share any information about the session. So with that, I think we can jump right into today's session. But as a precursor and to set the context, some of you may only be joining us on the Go Digital Western Cape webinar series for the first time, and just giving you a little bit of background on what this is about and why, as a department, we are doing this. So as I had mentioned earlier, I work in a unit which is referred to as the Digital Economy Unit. And as part of our department's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and in support of businesses and other members of our ecosystem, one of the initiatives, of which there are several, is the Go Digital Western Cape initiative. And this webinar series in particular is to provide information to businesses, mainly SMEs in the province, about various tools, various systems, various platforms, tips, and information around how the digitization of your business can be a very important component of how we navigate this COVID-19 era. So obviously digitization of business, or the digitalization of business as it is also known, is important regardless of COVID-19, but during this time it's of particular relevance, and it may also be very, very practical in terms of how we as business and the business ecosystem, how we are able to navigate this time. So that is a bit of background to the webinar series itself. And as I said, today is our ninth installment, and we will be continuing this into the future. Then coming to today's topic, as you saw, the topic is being led by Microsoft, and with a title Adapting to the New Normal and Building Business Resilience. So Microsoft, I think to all of us, has been a household name for many, many decades. And generally speaking, on a personal note, and I think in the workplace, most people are familiar with the Microsoft Office suite. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The other solutions and platforms and tools and applications in Microsoft are extremely extensive. And today we would like to take a step into that space, and that is what Mr. Dollie will inform us about. But at the same time, it of course needs to be said that there are many companies working in the space with various tools, applications, platforms, systems, etc. But regardless of which company or platform you look at, there are certain general principles, there are certain general practices which are good for businesses to adhere to. And it's within this context of how digital tools and systems and platforms, how these can add value in terms of the general aspects and general principles of business, which are so important in terms of sustainability of businesses and how you can grow and expand businesses going forward. So our panelist today, Mr. Dollie, will look at, of course, various Microsoft-related systems, tools, applications, but also place it within the broader business context and the broader good practices for business. I think particularly now, in this time that we are navigating, this becomes very relevant because what's been referred to recently as 3 stages through which businesses are moving during the COVID-19 era. Firstly, a stage where there's a response, an immediate kind of critical response, but then also moving to a phase of resilience and eventually possible reimagining of businesses and how businesses will be shaping themselves into the future and adapting to what is referred to as the new normal. So on that note, I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Mr. Khaliq Dollie. And as I said, he's the digital advisor at Microsoft. And Khaliq has many, many years experience in the sector. More recently has been focusing mainly on transforming and modernizing the public sector, but a highly experienced and very knowledgeable professional in the sector. So it's a pleasure for us to welcome you here today, Khaliq, and thank you very much for your time and your interest and for sharing the information that you are going to share with us today. We're really looking forward to it, and it's great to have you on board. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Dollie, our panelist from Microsoft today, and he will take us through the next part of today's session. Thank you, Khaliq. Over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Robert. Colleagues, good afternoon. Cool, so thank you very much. I do relish this opportunity to speak to you. And in fact, let me also turn on video, because I think in this day and age where we have so little interaction with people, we do actually seem to relish the opportunity to engage via video as well. So let me do that. And so that you can actually see that the picture on the profile does match who I am, albeit with a haircut that's a bit longer at the moment. So thank you again. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's not something that I usually do. I usually engage more with sort of corporate businesses, with the enterprise sector, but I do have a passion to help smaller business, and so where I can use my expertise to share with you and to help you, that's always a good opportunity. And I'm not going to be taking a very technical centric focus. I can if you want me to, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you more about a framework that one as Microsoft we've been using as we've navigated our way through the pandemic. And it's also a framework that we've been using with our larger customers. And so I do think from a smaller business point of view, it's a useful framework that I would like to invite you to think about as you navigate your way through this crisis as well. And as Robert says, while we're framing it within the current crisis, it's also about longer term sustainability for your business. So, I'm definitely not wanting to only talk about it in terms of the current crisis. The Microsoft that we know today is very different to the Microsoft that you may have known or that you think you actually know. Over the last couple of years, under the leadership of Satya, the organization has become so focused on how we can help and empower everyone on this planet. And it's through this COVID crisis as well that we've realized, or we've said, that no one person or no one company can overcome this challenge. It's going to take partnerships between private and public sector to help get past this. And what you may have seen is that from the start, so we've experienced this crisis right from the beginning, starting with China and the events as it unfolded there. Our offices based in China experienced this firsthand, and at the time, one of the vice presidents based out of that office started to communicate with our local customers, helping them to understand how they could use technology to respond to work from home, making available certain offers. And in fact, that mindset then started to infiltrate the whole of the organization, where that almost became the standard and the basis for how we started to share with other organizations. And we shared very openly, very frankly, because like you, we had to make the transition ourselves as well. But we experienced it early, sort of going back to China. And so we've very openly, very transparently shared our learnings in the hope that other people, other customers, other companies could learn from that as well. And so what we are seeing is that only 12% of the organizations out there, and this is globally, are actually prepared for what has happened. And we found that people, organizations have, and there's no polite way of saying this, they have scrambled to try and play catch up. We've spoken as an industry about this thing called digital transformation. And what we've seen COVID do is that it has accelerated probably 2 years worth of digital transformation within 2 months or within 3 months. But this has impacted organizations dramatically. And it doesn't actually matter how big you are or how small you are. We've seen the same challenges. Along with this, what we are seeing is that as people are working from home, there's more risk from a cybersecurity point of view. One of the webinars a couple of sessions back actually dealt with the issue around cybersecurity and how you need to start thinking about securing things. And cyber criminals have seized the opportunity by mimicking websites, by pretending to be sources of information for COVID to draw your attention there. And most of us are working from home. I'm at home at the moment, and I'm sure a lot of you may also be. But people don't necessarily have the process as well. They didn't have the technology put in place, first of all, and now it's a matter of also playing catch up with the processes to enable that. And so I'm sort of sketching a rough landscape of what we are seeing to help you understand that whatever you are experiencing, everyone globally are experiencing the same issues and the same challenges. And perhaps from a small business point of view, you may be experiencing it a bit differently. But I think that by leveraging tools in the Microsoft stack, but it could be others as well, you have the opportunity to compete, and you have access to the technology, the same technology platforms that the biggest players in the market has access to as well. I'm going to take you through thinking about how you can make your organization or your company a more resilient one by adopting some of the tools within the Microsoft platform, how you can start to reimagine or rethink your business models, perhaps use this as an opportunity to change the way that you're currently doing business. I have spoken about what the Microsoft journey has been. And so this provides a bit of a timeline, starting back on April the 13th, when we started to post blogs with what we've learned and sharing in a very frank and open manner. So what we've shared hasn't only been technology focused, it's also been business process focused. And the internet still has many of these blogs there. It's got tips and tricks on how to work from home, how to use the remote learning platforms. I've had my colleagues, and I've also personally done this. I have written LinkedIn articles on best practices on how to use Teams, for example, so that we could very quickly enable our customers, our small businesses, to start to be productive early on. So the framework that I want to take you through, and I invite you to engage in this framework and to think about how this could have an impact on your business, is the following. And we've seen this, by the way, each and every company are responding in this exact same manner. So as COVID hit us, there was this initial reaction, the response, navigating the now. What do we do right now? And then as we are starting to see the easing of lockdown, we move into the recover phase, so planning the comeback. And I think from a South African point of view, every time we kind of think that we're just about getting into that phase, and then we not quite there. So I think from a South African point of view, we kind of hovering between the response and the recovery phases. And then finally, how do we move beyond this? So how do we reimagine and shape the new normal? And for each of those aspects, I'm going to be talking to you about sort of in a very separate manner. And so from a response point of view, or some of the immediate things that we saw our customers doing was, first and foremost, was how do we get people to work from home? So how do we get people working in a productive fashion from a remote location? And for a lot of our customers, this meant, how do I get Microsoft Teams deployed fast and furiously? I've seen organizations go literally from having no one using Teams to having 11,000 people using Teams within 2 weeks. I've seen smaller organizations do the same, clearly not 11,000 people, but 10 or 20 people. And I'm going to share what I think is a fairly nice case study of a small business and how they've used the Office 365 platform to reimagine their business and to do business in a more digital manner. And one of the challenges that people have often is that they don't have the ability, people don't have access to devices, they don't have notebooks they can take home. So they were looking for virtualized desktop environments, and Microsoft responded here by making available cloud-based workstations that customers could make use of to access their customer networks, service, etc. But we're here to talk about what this means to you as the small business, right? And I certainly don't want to frame this within the enterprise or the corporate landscape only. And so the big sort of almost equalizer to me here is Office 365. And Office 365 is this cloud-based productivity platform that Microsoft has. It allows you the ability to host your productivity tools. So whether that is your email system, your document management system, and what we've seen very recently now, and everyone's felt the impact of that, Microsoft Teams. So Teams being this platform to work in a remote manner, to co-edit documents, to share documents between team members, to share documents with external customers, external partners. We've seen an uptake of usage from a Teams point of view that has just been astronomical. And what Microsoft did at the start of this crisis was to make available our business basics plan, which is really aimed at organizations that's under 300 staff members. And we made this available to organizations for a period of 6 months or during this COVID crisis. And so by engaging on that, or by engaging through that particular offer, Microsoft made available the Office 365 platform. And this is where we saw a lot of activity for customers that already used Office 365, and typically the email system would already be there. The big impact or the big hurry would be, how fast do I get Microsoft Teams rolled out? For others, it was a matter of, how do I move my on-premise email server, my on-premise file server into Office 365 so that I could work from any location or from home without needing to worry about how do I connect back into my on-premise network. We also saw Microsoft Forms suddenly take off big time, so the usage of forms. And all of you, having registered for this webinar, would have made use of forms. So you completed forms, you completed a form to express your interest. Robert and team used that form to capture data. And so as businesses needed to capture data in a very quick manner without needing to have teams and teams of IT staff members doing that, Microsoft Forms just provided that no-code forms capturing capability. In the same vein, we also made Office 365 E1, which is aimed at enterprise customers. We also made that available to our enterprise customers for a period of 6 months. One of the other areas that we spend a lot of time and energy on is education. So schools, education has always been top of mind from a Microsoft point of view, and for me personally as well. And we've always had Office 365 A1, which is an academic equivalent to E1, for free to all academic institutions, schools, universities, colleges, that sort of thing. However, there used to be a trial period of, I think it was 90 days. And after 90 days, you'd have to validate and confirm that you were, in fact, a qualifying institution. What we did as part of our response to COVID was to lift that qualification or verification process, that for 6 months, you could go without verification. And we lifted the restrictions. I think before you could have like 5 or 10 members in the trial process. We lifted that for 6 months. You could have up to 5,000 learners or teachers engaged on the Microsoft Teams platform. And we've seen a lot of uptake from local schools where they've now used that platform to be able to offer online learning to their learners. In fact, there's some schools that, based on their success from a Microsoft Teams point of view, have taken the bold decision to not even come back for the whole of term 2 and purely use online learning. So it's been really heartwarming to see how, as an organization, Microsoft has responded, and how business and educational institutions have picked this up and have built on top of the platform. And maybe this kind of gives me a good point to pause and share that, I think, case study with you. So about a year ago, one of my neighbors, lives a couple of houses down, came to speak to me. She runs a small business. She has a business management service, so bookkeeping, payroll management, registration of companies, and her business is solely aimed at other small businesses, where she will provide those services to you as a business, and so that you don't have to worry about that. And so she really wanted to know about how she could scale her business and grow the business without really growing the infrastructure. She had also just come out of a process where they had lost some data, very important data that was stored on local workstations and on a local server within her office. She had an email server hosted in one particular place, and like I said, she had data just sort of stored all over the show. So we had a conversation about how the Microsoft Office 365 platform could be leveraged for her business, and how, as she had new staff members joining, she would have to worry less about where the data was stored, or if someone left her organization, that they left with her data. And at the time, she took the strategic decision to migrate all of her infrastructure, so her document storage, her email server, and even using Teams at the time, and move all of that into Office 365, completely managed within the Microsoft Cloud. And I kind of lost track with her for a bit, and I happened to run into her just as lockdown started. And of course, I was curious to understand, how was lockdown impacting her as a business? She smiled. She's like, do you know what? Do you remember the discussion we had about Office 365 and how I could migrate my business onto that platform for better resilience? I'm like, yeah, I remember that conversation. She's like, well, COVID and working from home is a non-issue to me. I can work from home. My team, I think she's got between sort of 10 and 15 people, fairly small. They can work from home wherever they've got an internet connection. And for them, it was literally business as usual. So COVID did not disrupt this business of hers at all. So it's a real case study. Her practice runs out of Lansdowne. I didn't ask her for permission to share this with you, so I'm not going to reveal who the company is or what, sort of what her actual name is. One of the other things that we also saw happening at the time was that companies needed a way to communicate with their staff members. So it wasn't good enough to simply use email. They kind of needed to know, where are my employees? Are they working from home? Are they working from the office? How do I get information around COVID pushed out to them? And so again, a Microsoft response to this was that we developed a communication app. So we've got a tool called Power Apps. Power Apps is a low-code or no-code development platform. But what we did is we developed a fully fledged application. We published the code as open source and allowed anybody to download the source code and to make the application their own. And what this application does is it provides you the ability on a mobile phone or a device to push information to your staff members. But more importantly, it lets staff members check in with work. So am I working from home? Am I working from the office? In the back end, again, within Office 365, from an admin function, you do have access to a map, and in the map, there's a geospatial view of where your staff members are at. Are they working from home? Are they working from the office? And it provides companies with that peace of mind of knowing where their employees are, and should they need to respond, they can. It also had the ability for employees to raise a request, to ask a question, and that then lands up both within Teams, where you can respond to it, or it lands up in the mailbox of a particular person to respond. So it could be as basic as, I think at the start of the crisis, I kind of joked and said it could be as basic as send toilet roll. But I do sort of joke about that. And so that's what we saw from a response point of view. And I think this has kind of been the same for most companies. What I also did and took the time to help you, because I wanted you to have tangible things, links that you could go to. So I've compiled a bunch of resources with links on the internet, and these are particularly focused at small businesses, right? So how do you go about setting up for remote work? We've got a small business help and learning center. How do you keep your files and data in the cloud? What do you have to do to warn staff members to be on the lookout for in terms of phishing attacks and scams? All the links are there. They are for you to go and make use of. Find me via LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share a copy of this with you so that you have access to the links. We're also finding that security, like I said, is becoming so critical. And we've got some pointers as to how you can do something called multi-factor authentication. So that's where you receive a one-time PIN, or you have to authenticate via an app on your phone to make sure that you are who you say you are and that your identity hasn't been stolen by a cyber criminal. As we start to think about the recovery phase, so we've responded, now what do we do, right? And so the first thing I'm seeing here is that work from home is becoming the new normal. And so organizations are starting to think about how do they embed Microsoft Teams as part of the business processes. As a small business, I would like to invite you to think about the following. Using Teams to do virtual consultations as appropriate for your business, obviously, with your customers. So can you engage via Teams with your customers in pretty much the same way that we are doing right now? As I was preparing this, sort of top of mind to me was the fact that the health industry, barbers, hair salons, also I should have said the beauty industry is coming back now. And within Microsoft, within Office 365, we've got something called the Bookings app. And the Bookings app allows you to publish on the internet booking slots, which consultant is available, the times, and customers can either via a web portal or a mobile app go and book a particular a particular time slot. This is an ideal way to make sure that you've got social distance, that you don't have customers queuing up on your pavement, that they come in for their slot. You can even set up the app to have some buffer time if you needed to sterilize, to clean before the next customer comes in. And so I invite you to look at the booking app as a way to welcome your customers back to your business. We're also finding that businesses now are needing to understand or to know, or to do COVID screening rather, because they need to know who's actually in the building. Have they been exposed to people potentially with COVID, who's been diagnosed positive with COVID? Do they exhibit any of the symptoms? And again, here, we've seen an uptake of Microsoft Forms as a very simple way to do COVID screening. So you may want to do this for your own staff members, that you have a Microsoft form, you use your thermometer, and as staff members come into work in the morning, they, on their phones, capture temperature, capture if they are exhibiting any symptoms. That gets captured into an Excel spreadsheet, gets stored on the cloud. You don't have to worry about how that gets managed. Only thing that you worry about is that you've created this form and you can have the form up and running within, I'd say, half an hour. Again, there's some samples. I've pointed some links to you and you can go and look at that. As part of the recovery process, perhaps start to think about what I spoke about Power Platform. So that's when I spoke about Power Apps is part of Power Platform. So like I said, so the Power Platform gives you the ability to quickly develop mobile apps without having a background, without having to delve into intricate coding. So it's this no-code, low-code platform. And again here, I've published a DIY guide, or Microsoft has published a DIY guide. I've pointed you to where to find that, so that you could perhaps go and develop your own little mobile application. And that application could be perhaps your business focuses on field service and you need to understand where a technician is out in the field. Perhaps there is a customer that needs his fridge serviced. And so you can use a little app that you know where to send the technician to. They fill out the job card, and you can really automate your business process without really having to worry about how you go about developing and coding that. And then sort of as I get to the end here and you start to reimagine what your business may look like. And again, in this sort of using a framework approach rather than a definite go and do this. If you think about your business strategy, I'd like to invite you to think about it in the following manners. So strategy one, same product, different channel, right? And so perhaps this could be physical stores moving to an online market so that they are able to continue servicing and selling products. The next strategy is same infrastructure, different products. And I've seen so many great examples of this. I mean, the one that I keep on using because this is wonderful. Local company, it's an online business selling swimwear, so bathing suits, right? The way they pivoted their business as a response to COVID is that they started to deliver household goods. I think it was fresh produce, so fruit and vegetable. It's a world of a difference to selling swimsuits, but they had the online market, so they knew how to move products. So they simply pivoted their whole business, and they've now formed relationships with farmers to get access to produce. Great local example. Strategy number 3, same product, different infrastructure. And this could be about moving to the cloud. A lot of companies found that their on-premise servers, there was no one to look after it. They were dependent on expensive network links, and they just couldn't access it, right? However, still the same product, moving it to the cloud. This one takes a bit more work in that you may have to re-architect how a system works, but do think about how you can change the infrastructure so you are more resilient as you move forward. Excuse me. And then the last one to consider here is think about the network effect and potential new partnerships. we've seen in this space companies form partnerships with a delivery company. Yeah, I've got a friend of mine used to now deliver furniture. He quickly started to form partnerships with grocery companies, with fruit and veg sellers, and he started to now deliver those. And he was immensely busy through the whole period. But so think about how you can create new partnerships. And as you start to reimagine these digital channels, again, from a Microsoft point of view, there is a capability or technology called Power Virtual Agents. And what Power Virtual Agents does is it gives you, again, a low-code, no-code capability to create your own little virtual bots. So people can engage with your company through your website through a little AI bot. Again, you don't have to engage with expensive resources to go and do this for you. You could get this. This is not quite something that you'll get running within half an hour, but certainly within a week or so, you could have your own little virtual agent or virtual bot that you can use to service customers. And again, what I've done here is to try and point you towards some very specific examples and links as to how you could actually do this. So the reimagine phase to me is actually more about moving into cloud services properly. What I spoke about up until now has always been within the Office 365 productivity realm. Office 365 really gives you as a small business the ability to quickly create something without really engaging expensive IT resources. As you pivot your business and you become more cloud-centric, you may want to engage with IT expertise. And Microsoft has invested a lot of money and effort into our partner network, which is really how we reach smaller businesses, right? And we do that through companies called cloud solution providers. This is companies that you would buy your cloud services from. So you go and procure your cloud services. They will help assess your applications, see whether it could be moved to the cloud. They may even help you with modernizing your applications to become more cloud native. And so two examples over there, two companies that does a lot of good work in the local market is Crayon and then Tarsus as well. And I've provided the links to both of those companies for you. And then my very last slide, and this is more aimed at the technology companies, so independent software vendors and startups. Microsoft has a business incubation process aimed at tech startups, where there's two offers really. There is a sort of getting started offer, and there's a premium one, which I've listed out there. And the best way to engage on that process is by going to the link aka.ms/join-ISV. We've got a team servicing requests coming there. And so if you are in the tech startup market, I invite you to go and make use of those links. So Robert, I think I'm at the end of my slides and at the end of my time as well. So I'd like to hand it back to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very, very much, Khaliq. That was really great, and also a lot of information and a lot of resources for our audience to take in and to consider. So thank you very much for that. We'll take a couple of questions, and there are a couple of questions. I think just before we go into the questions from the audience, what I found interesting was the fact that while there are so many tools and applications and systems which businesses can use, what also came through quite clearly was that although there are so many things to choose from, as a business owner or manager, one shouldn't simply just rush into this and try and use everything that's available. I think what came through in what you were saying is that you must first decide, do you need a tool or an application or a system for communication? Do you need something with regard to cybersecurity and data backup? So do you have to look at the cloud? Do you need something to assist you with sharing information and documents between yourselves and your employees? Do you need to look at monitoring systems, publishing, surveys? So for all of those kind of general business practices, there is an app or a tool or a system which could address that. But I think what I got was it's first important to address what it is you're trying to achieve, what it is you're trying to do, and then finding the best tool or app or system to meet that need. Because otherwise you may just go in and be overwhelmed with various things which you don't need. So I think for businesses and organizations, it's important to do that little bit of analysis first, and then I think the process will be quite streamlined in terms of what to choose out of this really big basket of options that you've presented. So we have two questions, a couple of questions. One of them, I'll go for the first one first, Khaliq. It's one of the members in the audience say they've been struggling to move from the platform they're currently using onto Teams. They would love to move onto Teams, but they're struggling with getting on board with Teams. And they would like to know, is there any advice? Is there something you could suggest? Maybe a support service from Microsoft, or are there tutorials on YouTube? What would you suggest is the best way for someone trying to get on Teams from a different platform to follow?
Yeah, so we've published a whole lot of self-help guides, and in my presentation I do have those links published there. So the best is probably to start with those self-help guides, and then to see whether you can, if they are of help to you. Following on from that, I would suggest then, of course, is to engage with the partner network and to see how those partners could help you with it. And there's a whole bunch of partners, and I certainly wouldn't want to appear to be favoring one partner, rather than the next. But certainly look at the partner network. One of the partners that I did have in my slide deck, Crayon, when I was doing the research, I did discover actually that they've got very specific Teams offers as well, where they would help you to onboard onto Teams. But in the same way, there's other partners. There's First Tech that does a lot of work in that space. A partner called Mint, and I have to call them out because Mint actually has done a lot of work to empower schools, webinars aimed at schools to help teachers to onboard. And this was at their expense doing that because it was their way of making a difference. Microsoft has since helped to sponsor some of that. So certainly the partner network will be able to help you with that. But start off by looking at some of the links that I have shared and you will have access to.
Okay, thanks for that. Then there's another question from one of our audience members, Dorette. The question is, how private is the Power Apps employee communication solution by Microsoft? And is there any data capturing by Microsoft? And is there clear privacy policy? And this is especially in terms of location sharing and so forth. Any feedback on that?
That's a great question, right? And so the thing about Power Apps, and in fact Office 365 in general, is that your information is always shared within your Office 365 tenant. So it's not shared with anyone else. The information is yours. Microsoft is actually very clear from a data point of view. We don't use the data for our own purposes at all. We don't have access to the data. Your data is always yours. It always belongs to you. And should you offboard from the service, you can export all of your data. So it's always your data, and we don't use the data for any other purposes. But there's an interesting nuance from the Power Apps question that was asked, and that is that When a staff member interacts with that Power app, they are sharing their GPS locations with you as a company, so within your tenant. So I do still think that there is perhaps an onus on the company to notify the staff member that the company will have access to knowing where that staff member happens to be at, right? So there is a data privacy point of view, but it's not so much Microsoft having access or anyone else having access to that data, but rather you as the internal company, if you understand the distinction there.
Thanks, Khaliq. I think we're coming to the last part of our session, the last few minutes. I just wanted to make one general statement or comment, and then perhaps you have some closing comments from your side. So I think just from my side, in closing, what was also valuable to hear is that while there are various tools and applications and so forth from Microsoft, and obviously which applies to other software companies also, which can be very much geared towards enhancing current business practices, so the digitization of existing systems or existing processes. What you also shared with us towards the end of the presentation is that digital also in itself presents new business opportunities, which is in addition to just kind of digitizing existing ways of working. I think that's quite exciting, because moving into it doesn't, it's not just about making the things you do manually or by analog means digital, but actually exploring new business opportunities which only digital presents. So I'm glad that you were able to share some of those ideas, because I think in the reimagining phase, as we move into the next few months, new business opportunities and which are unique to digital platforms and digital systems, I think is something which is also going to be very important, because the rules and the context which applied in the past don't apply now. And I think with the right tools in the box and a vibrant imagination, then there's some new things could emerge which we can't even imagine today. So I think it's important that you added that also, which was quite valuable for me. So with that, Khaliq, I would like to just hand over to you if there's any last comments before we close off the session, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so I mean, I think that summary was perfect, right? And that's why I try to take the approach to not talk about technology, right? I mean, so I do work for Microsoft. I believe our platform is brilliant. I mean, Office 365 to me is this great equalizer that it doesn't matter who you are, how big you are as a company, whether you are a 12-person show or whether you have 120,000 people working for you, you've got access to the same technology. And I mean, just from a price point of view, and I mean, I didn't really want to touch on this really, but besides the fact that we've made this available for free for 6 months, Office 365 Business Basics, when I checked our website last night, I think it comes at a cost of 76 Rand per user per month. For 76 Rand, you're getting access to a cloud-based email system, you get access to Teams, you get access to OneDrive for business, so cloud storage, I think it was 1 terabyte that comes with that. You get access to SharePoint. So for 76 Rand a month, I do think it's not something that's unaffordable, right? And it's the same kind of services that a big corporate would make use of. And so that to me is like this great equalizer, and you can really build a digital business or digitize your processes on top of that. And so that's also why I kind of took this approach, and I hope that it came through. I didn't want to talk about the technology. I wanted to talk about the same way that I would engage with a big corporate is what's the framework? And I think you sketched that quite well. Understand what you're trying to achieve, and then we'll fit the technology in and make that work, right? So I do hope everyone that joined, thank you for joining, and I hope that the framework approach resonated with you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much again, Khaliq, for a great presentation. I think it's really valuable, and there's a lot that we as the audience can take away from it. So the manner in which you presented. I think the links, you shared many links. Just to the audience members, we will be putting a recording of this video up on our website shortly, so you would be able to access that. But Khaliq, I think I recall earlier in this session, you did mention that if people do want to reach out to you, they can do so via LinkedIn. They can find you on LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out to Khaliq directly, please do so via LinkedIn. But from our side to our presenter, thank you very much. It's been a great session, really valuable information, and I'm sure I can speak for our team and also the audience that we're going to take a lot away from that. Okay, so thank you very much, Khaliq. What I'd like to do now is just reshare a screen, because we'd just like to round up today's session. To our audience, thank you very much again for joining us. As I said, some of you may have been on our webinars before, and you would be familiar with our sessions, but I think just before we finish off, I'd like to inform you that our July program is currently being finalized. As you can see on your screen, we're going to be focusing very much still on e-commerce, on-demand delivery and online retail, and then also contactless payment systems or online payment systems, and cloud-based solutions for SMEs. So we're going to move into the space of digital business and digitization, and that's what you can expect in our July program, but we will be communicating that with you going forward. Then furthermore, for those of you who are not aware of this yet, you can access the 8 or 9 webinars we have done in the past since the beginning of the Go Digital Western Cape webinar series. It's on the website, and you'll see it on the top of your screen. So please visit our website and you can access video recordings of our other exciting topics which we have concluded to date. So on that note, from our side at the Digital Economy Unit, for me as host, once again, thank you to our audience for joining us, for taking interest and taking the time out to be with us today. We hope you had a lot of value that you could get out of the session. To our panelists, Mr. Khaliq Dollie, the digital advisor from Microsoft, great to have you on board, really valuable session. Thank you once again to you. And then to the Digital Economy team for making all this happen. Thank you very much to you too. And yes, on that note, we'd like to say goodbye. We hope you keep safe, keep healthy, and keep warm. And we will see you on the next round. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.